question. Remember, there are two versions of the equation of a circle, right? The scary looking one is called what? Your general equation. And the more polite looking one is called what? Your standard. Now, when it comes to finding the equation of a circle, provided that they gave you the circle and they gave you the center and the value of the radius, it's always easier to get the standard equation. Now, once we get the standard equation, all we have to do is expand the brackets and simplify. And when that happens, we will end up with the general equation. So let me just make sure you have the standard equation correct first. So you have the little brackets here, you have two pairs of brackets, and you have to put what here? The radius squared in that little area here. Now, last week I told you, well, when you're finding the standard equation, you put x here, and you always put y there. And then you look at the center coordinates. This here is the x center, and of course, this is your y center. The opposite of these values go in the brackets, the opposite. So if the x center coordinate is +2, then we have to put -2. And if here's -5 next to the y, we put the opposite, +5. Now I'm wondering if you all got tricked in this area. Over here, we're supposed to take the radius and square it. So this here is the radius, so we're supposed to square this entire value. Now, last week, I think I mentioned that whenever a squared comes in contact with a square root, both of them will cancel off. So over here, the squared belongs to both people. So the 3 gets squared, and the square root of 5 also gets squared, well, at the same time. So 3 squared is 9. Over here, the squared and the square root, well, they bounce up, so they cancel out. So you end up with 9 multiplied by 5, which is 45. How much people had the 45 in this position? Like you got exactly 45 and it didn't fall for any tricks. That there is the standard equation. Right, but we're not finished because we're looking at the general equation. From there, when you reach this point, remember what squared means. Squared means, well, in terms of brackets, it means 2 brackets next to each other. So this is x -2, well, multiplied by another x -2. It's a different color here, plus y + 5 by what? Another y + 5, and this entire thing is equal to 45, right? So expand these brackets, expand the pink brackets, throw everybody on the same side, and simplify. Right, Jody, I think something went wrong there. When you expand the blue brackets, you're supposed to get this, right? You'll get x squared, you will get a -2x and another -2x, giving you -4x, and then you'll get a +4. So make sure and work towards this, right? And for the pink brackets, you will get y squared, you will get a +5y and another +5y. And when you put those two together, you'll get +10y. And then 5 by 5 is 25, right? And this is equal to what? 45, right? So let's throw everybody on the same side, add up all the x squareds, all the x's, all the y's, and then everyone else without any letters. And we'll see who has it right, and we'll see who has it wrong. Right? So when you throw across the +45, well, I can do it right here. When you throw across the +45, you'll get -45, and this side will be equal to 0. So you have x squared plus y squared. Well, they have no friends here. So it's x squared plus y squared. Let's handle the x's next. You have -4x. Well, he has no friends as well. The 10y is by himself. So I guess it's just the 4, the 25, and the minus 45, right? So we just have to add that up, and we're finished. 4 plus 25 minus 45. You're supposed to get minus 16, right? Some people got positive 16 here by mistake, right? It's minus 16. And that's the answer. That's a general equation of this particular circle, right? So go through the working. If you made mistakes, of course, I'm always interested in knowing what were your mistakes. All right, so let's move on. All right, so we're gonna try some past paper style questions. And this is where all the hard work from the beginning of the term is going to pay off, right? Like I said today, you're going to have coordinates, geometry mixed up in this. You're going to have quadratics mixed up in this, right? And of course, all of this is going to be surrounding a circular equation type of question. So here's your first question. I have the formulas here to help you out and whatnot, right? So get started with part A and part B. This one is no tricks at all. The only small trick here, right? Remember, when you have the equation of a circle, but when they give you to the general form, you have to make sure the in front of the x squared is clean, meaning that it has nothing here where the 1 is understood, right? So everything seems okay here, but there's nothing over here. So usually there's be a number here like +7 or -8. Now, if it have nothing here, then we have to assume it's what? 0. So that means the C value is 0. So to find the center coordinates, right? If we're trying to find the center, what we're supposed to do, whoever is touching X, remember last week we said whoever is touching X, we'll call them Xavi. And whoever is touching Y, right, we'll call them yoke. And it's kind of strange, but that's a nice way to remember it, right? To make it a little bit easier. So all we have to do is to find the center is take Xavi and divide it by -2. So for part A, it was just a matter of taking -2 and dividing it by -2. Some people forgot it was -2 we are dividing by. That -2 is understood. It's part of the formula. The yoke value is 14, and we divide him by -2 also. Hence, the center is +1 and -7, right? So make sure you have the signs correct and whatnot, right? And to find the radius, you have the formula here, right? Remember, you have the square root last. Otherwise, the calculator will misinterpret it, right? So when you're finding the radius, I'm not working it out. I'm giving you all a little while to work it out. Incorrect. All right, so let's see the working here. So it's supposed to be just some guys for some reason. Right. So we're supposed to take Xavi, right? And when he is -2, and we're supposed to divide him by +2. The yoke value is the 14 divided by 2. Don't forget to put the square. But C is 0, right? So we minus in 0, right? So we don't even have to put this if we don't want to. So on the y part, right? -1 divided by 2 is -1. You have to put squared there. 14 divided by 2 is squared. I'm not even going to bother to put a 0 there. I think last week I mentioned that whenever you square anything in the world, you're going to get a positive value. So -1 squared is 1. 7 squared is 49. Now, if we add this up, we're going to get 50, and we have to square root last. Now, I prefer if you leave this in third form. And the reason is, if you square root this, again, 7.07, but you have to round off, right? Whenever you square root something and you don't get a nice answer in this particular topic, I want you to leave it as a cert. Now, 50 is not the simplest version of this cert. Let me help you simplify it here. 50 is the same thing as 2 multiplied by 25. I think we could all agree with that. So there's a multiply in between these two numbers. So both of them at the same time get squared. So the 2 gets squared and the 25 gets squared. 25 is easy to square root. You cannot square root 2 and get a nice number. So you leave it at the square root of 2, 5. Or if you want to put the 5 first and then the square root of 2, anyone is correct. But the examiner in CSEC will want it like this or like this, right? Try to refrain from putting a decimal that you're forced to round off to. These answers are more accurate, okay? So take down the working and we're finished with that question. All right, so this question is going to, well, I think it's going to boil down to a quadratic. So everything on the side here, right? I think it's supposed to help us solve a quadratic. So anyway, get started on the question and let's see how far you reach. Let me draw a makeshift graph here. We all know graphs have what? A y-axis and an x-axis, right? That's how we know graphs to be. Let's say that we have a curve. So the curve looks like that. Strange looking curve. Whenever a graph cuts the x-axis, right? You'll notice, right? Like if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and over here is 5, and let's say I have 1, 2, 3, 4. The coordinates of this point will be 5, 0. You will notice that when any graph in the world cuts the x-axis, who does end up being 0? The y value will always be what? 0. And it's the opposite for the y-axis. Any graph in the world that cuts the y-axis, well, what's the coordinates of this point? 0, 4. You will notice that x is 0, right? So that's a general trait for any graph cutting the x or y axis. So let's read through this question, right? The y coordinates of the point where the circle, remember the circle is a graph, the circle is a curve, just a very, very neat curve, crosses the y-axis. Now, when they say crosses the y-axis, they mean cuts the y-axis. So you know what? So tell me, which one are they asking us to pretend? Are they asking us to pretend x is 0 or y is 0? What is this code for? If I tell you a graph cuts the y-axis, what are we pretending to be 0? The x or the y? Right, right. When something cuts the y-axis, but it's on the screen here, we have to pretend x is 0. So that's all they're already asking us to do in this equation, you know. They're already asking us to go to that equation, and anywhere you see the letter x, throw it away and replace it with 0. I know they could have said it easy like that, but this is code form for it. So everyone do that for me, right? And then when we replace all the x's with 0, we're going to attempt to solve the equation. And there are two ways we could solve the equation. I'm going to do it both ways, just because I want an excuse to revise quadratics. So take a few seconds. All right. So, like I said, we're replacing this x with 0, so you get 0 squared, and you're replacing this x with 0. But we know anything by 0 is 0, and 0 squared is 0. So I think everyone has realized we'll just be left with the y squared, the positive 14y, and the equal and 0. So this is what we end up with. Y squared plus 14y, and this is equal to what? 0. So they want us to solve this equation. Well, this one is easy to solve because it's only 2 items, and we could just factorize out y, and we'll get y plus what? 14. And we just put each bracket equal to 0. We put this y equal to 0, and then we put this bracket also equal to 0. This one has already been solved for us. So the first answer for y is 0. And when we solve for the other y, we'll get minus 40. All right? Great. So take down those two answers, and then I want to show you how to interpret that answer. Right? So that means apparently I had a circle like this. Remember, this is the y-axis. And apparently, it cut the y-axis at 2 points. Oops, sorry, I did that a little bit wrong. We'll draw that a little bit better. You have your x-axis here and your y-axis. So apparently, this circle it may have looked something like this, like that. And it cut the y-axis at 0, that's 0 there, and it also cut at where? Minus 14, right? So that's a little interpretation of how it might have looked, right? But I want to get this 0 and minus 14 a different method. I want to use the quadratic method, okay? Here's the thing, look at this equation here. We know this is a quadratic. It have a y squared, it have a y, so it have a b, but does it have a c, right? Does it have a c value, this quadratic here? The answer is no, it does not have a c value. That just means we have to assume the c value is how much? 0. So we know over here is a 1. So that means A is 1, B is 14, and C is what? 0. Do you all think you all can use the quadratic formula and tell me when you use it, if you still got back what? The 0 and minus 14, right? Physically go through it. You have to get real accustomed with the quadratic formula today. Almost all the questions going to boil down to a quadratic later. So let's just throw in the values here in the formulas, right? So I have a little format already here. So the formula says minus b. Well, we know b is 14, so we can put 14 here. Then we have to say 14 squared. A is how much? 1, and C is 0. So when we work this part here, when we work this out on the calculator, the part underneath the square root, well, everything here is going to boil down to 0 because anything by 0 is 0. So we're going to get 14 squared. And when you square root 14 squared, you're going to get back what? 14. And A is how much? A is 1. So outside here, we have minus 14 plus or minus 14 divided by 2 by 1 is what? 2. So on top, we're going to get minus 14 plus 14, and then we divide by 2. That will give us the first answer. Then minus 14 minus 14, and you divide by 2. I think this will give us 0, and this will give us back the minus 14. Yeah, they asked us for they asked us the y coordinates of the points, right? So the y coordinates is 0 and minus 14. If they had asked us for the coordinates, in a case like that, we would have had to put the x and the y value. Like this point would be 0, 0, and this point would be what? 0, minus 14. But over here, they only ask us for the y coordinates. So we only have to put the 0 and minus 14. All right, so let's get started with the next question. All right. Let's help you out a little bit. Let's make sure you have the center coordinates correct first. Let's get the center of that circle. Now, to get the center of the circle, well, I think everyone realized now Zavi is how much? Minus 2. And the yoke is what? 14. This question appeared, this same equation appeared in one of the first slides today. So the center, we're supposed to take the minus 2 and divide it by minus 2, and then the 14 and divided by minus 2. So the center is 1 minus 7. So that means the center over here is 1 minus 7. And for those who were not too sure, right, the point 2, 0 is over here. It's where the tangent made contact with the circle, right? So if you take a line and draw it here, these two lines, according to normal maths, well, what would be the angle in between the two orange lines? Well, the angle between a radius and a tangent is always how much degrees? Right, Nikolai, correct. Jaden, plenty of people have it correct. It's always 90 degrees. So in other words, these two lines are perpendicular. Now the question is asking you to find the equation of this line. That's the point of this equation, of this question. So here's my advice, just like how we would have done it in normal maths class. We could use, right? We could use this formula to calculate the gradient of the radius. And once we get the gradient here, we can find the gradient of the tangent. That's the one where you flip the gradient and change its sign, the negative reciprocal. All right, so let's work out the gradient of the radius. So it's y2 minus y1 already labeled. So it's 0 minus, look at it, y2 is 0. The formula says we must put a minus sign, but y1 is negative. So two negative signs going to touch on top here. And then it's x2 minus x1. So again, a positive here. 0 plus 7 is 7. 2 minus 1 is 1. So the gradient over here is 7 on 1. So that means for this line here, the gradient is the negative reciprocal. We have to flip it and change its sign. So if you got the gradient of the tangent to be exactly minus 1/7, you have it correct, right? But that's not the end of the question. We have to find what? The equation of this line. I just have to erase this little area here, right? I need the space. So I'm going to go in this area here and erase everything. All right, so let me see what we have so far. The equation of any straight line is y is equal to mx plus c. For the tangent, we just figured out the gradient. The gradient was how much? Minus 1/7. And of course, just like in maths class, we would have to find the value of c. Now, to find c, we need a point on the line. We have to choose this point here, the 2, 0, because he is on the circle, but he's also on the tangent at the same time. So according to this point, x is 2 and y is 0. So we're going to go over here, replace the y with 0 and the x with 2 plus c. This is going to be easy. Minus 1 7 by 2 is minus 2 sevenths. We want to solve for c. Throw across minus 2 sevenths. You're going to get what? 0 plus 2 sevenths. How much people got that for c? Positive 2 sevenths. Check your signs and everything. Make sure your signs 100% correct. Right, so if you didn't get it correct, that is okay. Check through the working, see where you could have gone wrong and, point out the mistake. Right, so a lot of people forgot to find the reciprocal, right? Now, here's the thing, right? They want the equation of the circle in this format. So this is what we know so far. Y is equal to minus 1 7x. And we just found out c to be 2 sevenths. We need to get rid of the sevenths because they want it in a nice flat form like this. So remember in maths, whatever you do to one side, you can do to everyone else on the other side. So if I multiply everyone on this side by 7, I just have to make sure and multiply everyone on the other side by 7. And the advantage of doing that, you'll get 7y here. But if this 7 and this 7 will, will cancel out, leaving you with minus 1x. You don't have to put the 1. The 1 is understood. The 7 and the 7 cancel out here with 2. And what they want you to do is throw everybody on the same side and put the x and y's first. So when you throw across the minus x, you'll get positive x. You have this positive 7y who was there all the time. You throw across positive 2, you get minus 2. And now this side is 0. It's in the format the examiner wants. Right, so check through the working, see where you could have gone wrong, and of course, let me know what you did wrong. Time to move. All right, so here we have another question, right? Well, this one has no tricks in it. It's straightforward. They give you the general equation of the circle. That's what the center coordinates. They want the radius. All right. I should already put harder questions. Right, so I think it's the whoever is touching X, everyone knows by now. This is Zavi, right? So that is Zavi, and this is the yoke here, right? Right. So it's just a matter of, I think some people just forgot the signs. Number Zavi is minus 10, and the yoke is 6, and we divide them by minus 2. So I think when we work this out, we get in the center to be positive 5 and minus 3, right? So minor mistakes here. Some people had minus 5 by mistake. Right. The radius, remember, the advice is if you work out the radius and you're getting a reoccurring decimal or a decimal that just doesn't end, an irrational decimal, leave it in third form, right? I'm going to keep reinforcing that, right? A lot of people are not putting it in third form. So let's use this formula here. Well, I'll use the formula right here. You're using minus 10 divided by positive 2. You have to make sure and square it. Take positive 6 divided by 2. Make sure and square it. The formula says you must put a minus sign. And the C value happens to be positive 30. So no problems here. And we have to square root last. So we ended up with minus 5 squared plus 3 squared minus 30. 25 plus 9 minus 30. Let's see what we get there. Oh, 25 plus 9 minus 30. We get a real nice answer here. Real people got terrible answers. Come on, guys, for those who are sending, we got such a nice answer. We getting 4, eh? And then we supposed to square root the 4. The answer is 2. The radius is just 2 units, right? Because we don't know whether it's centimeters or meters or whatnot, right? All right. Next question here, right? So this question is an extension of the question I just went. You notice it's the same formula, right? So the center would obviously be the same. The radius would also be the same, but they're asking for something different. Well, the first thing is we replacing all the x's with 4. So we have to replace him with 4, and we have to replace this x with 4. So let's at least get that down first. So 4 squared is 16 plus y squared. 4 by minus 10 is minus 40. Then you have the 6y. Then you have the 30. And then you have equal to what? 0. Okay. So let's try to simplify this. It looks like a quadratic because it have a y squared and a y already. So we have y squared plus 6y. Now add up the 16 minus 40 and 30. Let's see what we get. 16 minus 40 plus 30. Anybody got 6 here? It looking correct so far? I just want to make sure me make no mistakes there, right? All right. So the number touching y squared is 1. So this is clearly a quadratic. It's just to pull out the A, the B, and the C. This is A, B, and C. Right? So you gotta take your time now, throw it into the formula. You're getting B is minus B. So we have 6 here. We have 6 squared. A is 1. C is 6 and A is 1, right? So try your best to simplify that scenario. All right, so let's work out the part underneath the square root sign. Now that part's easy. 6 squared is what? 30 what? 6. So 6 squared is 36. You have a minus sign here. 4 by 1 is 4. 4 by 6 is 24. So 36 minus 24, right? 36 minus 24, you're getting what? 12. And what do we have to do with that 12? Square root, okay? So how much is the square root of 12? I am getting this on my calculator. You're getting 3.46. I'm going to 2 decimal places, right? 3.46, right? So you have what here? Minus 6 waiting, and you have 1 here. So remember how you do this now. You're saying minus 6, you plus the 3.46, and whatever you get, you divided by 2, because 2 by 1 is 2. That will give you the first answer. Make sure the top is in brackets, otherwise the calculator will misinterpret it. And then you say minus 6 minus 3.46, and then you divide it by 2. 6 minus plus 3.46 divided by 2. And a lot of people sent me this answer, minus 1.27. And then 6 minus 3.46 divided by 2. Minus 4, I'm going to put a minus sign, 7.3. Those are the 2 answers, right? So I just want to show you how this would look in a drawing, like if you had graph paper, like how it would look, right? Right. So if you had graph paper, so you have your x and your y axis as usual, right? Just to get an idea how this might look, right? So apparently there's a circle, right? And let me just say this point here is, well, here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. the line x equal to 4. I don't know if you all remember this from maths. The line x equal to 4 is a vertical line going through what? 4, right? And I kind of draw it wrong here, right? I think I draw it a little bit wrong here. It's supposed the y coordinates of it cutting supposed to be minus 1.2 and minus 4.2. So let me just draw this back here, right? So in real life, it might actually look something like this. You have a circle, and this green line is the line x equal to 4, and it's cutting the y coordinates. The y coordinates over here is minus 1.27, and the y coordinate here is minus 7.43. Right? So that is how you would, it might look on a, how you say, on graph paper. So everyone take down this diagram now, so you have a visual on it. And let me know when you are finished. Right, so here's another question, a little helpful formula here from normal maths class, right? Maths class. Right. So you could, it's these 2 points here. You could call this one x1, you could call this one y1, and this one x2 and y2. And you just throw it into the formula here. All right. So it's x2 minus x1. It doesn't even have any tricks, meaning no minus signs. So it's 10 minus 7 squared plus 13 minus 8 close bracket squared. And of course, we have the square root after, right? So 10 minus 7 is 3. We get square that after. 13 minus 8. 13 minus 8 is 5. So 3 squared is 9 plus 25. And we're going to end up with the square root of 34. Right? I guess we can leave it like this, but I'll make a mental note, right? So I know when I square root 34, I'm not going to get a nice answer, right? So the square root of 34, 34, or some people might have this, right? 5.83, and the answer has to be in units. All right, now that's only part A of the question. I have a good feeling that it's going to have a part B and probably what? A part C. Right, so just look for any mistakes. I think only one person got it wrong, right? So it's probably easy to pinpoint where the error is. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. And let's see what they're asking us now. Keep in mind the distance from P to Q is the square root of 34. So in part B of the question now, they want us to write down the equation of C, which is the circle. They want to know the equation of the circle. Now, here's the thing. They didn't tell us whether it's the general equation or the standard equation. So we're going to find both today, right? So let me help you out here. Remember the center is how much? 7, 8. And the radius was the square root of 34. So write down the equation of the circle now. Both for me, right? The standard and the general. I'm pretty much sure everyone would have the standard equation. It will be x minus 7 squared plus what? Y minus 8 squared. And then you have to square this. So when you square the square root of 34, you're just going to end up with what? 34. Right, but this is the standard equation. I think you all know what to do in order to get the general. You just have to expand the brackets. So I'm going to help you out here. I use a different color. And this here, well, all the working is here now. This here is your general equation, right? All right, so here we have a part C, right? And you guys realize it's almost the same thing now. They want the equation of the tangent now in this form, right? So it's almost a repeat of a previous question with different values. All right, so how much sun is blocking my view here? Remember, here's what? 7, 8. Q is what? 10, 13. All you have to do is find the gradient of this line, flip it and change its sign, and they want you to find the equation of the tangent once again. All right, so let's see what's going on here. It's y2 minus y1, so it's 13. Oops, who chose that color? 13 minus 8 divided by x2 minus x1. So 13 minus 8 is how much? 13 minus 8. I'm getting 5 on top, and I'm getting 3 underneath. So that means the gradient of the yellow line is 5 on 3. So what would be the gradient of the perpendicular line? That means the gradient over here is, you have to flip it. So you get 3 on 5, but you change the sign as well, right? So it's minus 3/5. And now to find the C value, the y-intercept, you use point Q. Right? So this is what you know so far. Y is equal to minus 3/5 x. And you're on your way to finding what? C. 90. Let's see if that's right. So we're choosing point Q, right? So we have the letter Y here and we have X here. We can throw those away and we're going to replace it with what? 13 here and what here? 10 here, right? Because Y and X. Well, this one boil on good. 5 into 5 is 1. 5 into 10 is 2. So you end up with 13 minus 6 plus C. Minus 3 by 2 is 6. Throw across minus 6. You're going to get positive 6. So C is 19. So you all are correct. But that's not the end of the question. Remember, they want it in a kind of different form. They want the answer like this. Y is equal to minus 35x plus 19. But they want it in this strange form where it have no fractions and everybody on the same side. We need to get rid of that 5. So we multiply everyone on both sides by 5. Multiply him by 5, him by 5, him by 5. You'll get 5y, 5 and the 5 cancel out, minus 3x, and 19 by 5 is 95. Throw everybody on the same side, you'll get positive 3x, positive 5y, minus 95, equal to 0.